Ambassador Hyunji Kim sat in her small office aboard the orbital defense station, watching Earth spin slowly below through the reinforced window. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago as she worked through endless reports about trade disputes and mining rights. The blue planet looked peaceful from up here, but she knew better. Humanity was still the new kid in a galaxy full of species that had been traveling between stars for millions of years. The communication panel suddenly burst to life with a harsh crackling sound that made her jump. The voice that came through was unlike anything human. It sounded like glass breaking mixed with wind chimes, the unmistakable speech pattern of a Vorthak representative. "Ambassador Kim of the human species," the voice said, each word precise and cold. "You are hereby summoned to appear before the Galactic Space Council. You have exactly 72 standard hours to present yourself and provide explanations for the dangerous gravitational disturbances detected throughout human space." Hyunji's blood ran cold. Gravitational disturbances could only mean one thing. Someone had discovered Project Shadow. She quickly activated her secure channel while the alien voice continued its demands. Failure to comply will result in immediate quarantine protocols being enacted around all human-controlled systems. Your species will be cut off from galactic commerce and communication until this matter is resolved. The Council expects full cooperation and complete transparency regarding your illegal experiments with space-time manipulation. The transmission ended with a sharp electronic whine that made her ears ring. Hyunji stared at the now silent communication panel, her mind racing. Project Shadow wasn't supposed to exist according to official records. Only a handful of people in the entire human government knew about the secret research stations hidden in the asteroid belt, where Dr. Min Seo Choi and her team had been working on something that could change everything. Her personal communicator buzzed. "Admiral Tae-ho Park calling from somewhere in deep space." She accepted the connection immediately. "Hyunji, tell me you didn't just receive what I think you received." Tae-ho's voice was tense, even through the encrypted channel. "They know," she said simply. "The Vorthak representative just delivered the summons personally. 72 hours to appear before the full council." There was silence on the other end for several seconds. Hyunji could picture Tae-ho standing on the bridge of the Shadow's edge, probably staring out at the stars, while running calculations in his head. The prototype vessel was humanity's first successful dark matter manipulation ship, invisible to most sensors and capable of things that violated several supposedly universal laws of physics. "How much do they know?" Tae-ho finally asked. "Hard to say. They mentioned gravitational disturbances, which means they've detected our tests, but they called it illegal experimentation with space-time manipulation, not dark matter weaponization. They might not understand what we've actually accomplished." Another pause. "That might work in our favor. If they think we're just playing with dangerous physics instead of building an entirely new class of warship, Tae-ho, it doesn't matter what they think we're doing. What matters is that they're threatening complete isolation if we don't comply. No trade, no communication, no access to galactic civilization. They could destroy us economically without firing a single shot." The Admiral's sigh was audible through the communicator. "And if we tell them the truth about what we've built, they'll either demand we turn it over or declare us too dangerous to exist. Either way, humanity loses." Hyunji stood up and walked to the window, looking down at Earth's night side where city lights twinkled like stars. Billions of people down there had no idea their entire future might depend on decisions made in the next few days. "There's something else," she said quietly. The way the Vorthak spoke, there was fear in its voice, real fear. "These are beings whose species has been manipulating gravity for longer than humans have existed, and they're scared of what we might have created." "Maybe they should be," Tae-ho replied grimly. "Dr. Choi's latest tests showed capabilities we didn't think were possible even 6 months ago. The Shadow's edge isn't just invisible to their sensors. Yesterday we accidentally existed in 2 places at once, for 3 minutes before we figured out how to fix it." The implications of that statement hung in the air between them. Humanity had stumbled onto something that defied not just the known laws of physics, but apparently the understanding of civilizations millions of years more advanced. "What's our play here?" Hyunji asked. "You go to the council, buy us time, make them think we're cooperative while keeping the real capabilities secret. Meanwhile, I'll gather the other shadow ships and prepare for whatever comes next." "How many ships do we have operational?" 8 fully functional vessels with 6 more in final testing phases. Not enough to fight the entire galaxy, but maybe enough to make them think twice about pushing us too far. Hyunji nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I'll leave for the council station in 6 hours. Taeho, if this goes wrong, it won't go wrong," the Admiral said firmly. "We've spent too long being the galaxy's weakest species. It's time they learned that humans don't stay weak for long." The council chamber was enormous, stretching out like a vast amphitheater, with seats arranged in perfect semicircles that rose toward a domed ceiling painted with star maps from 1,000 different worlds. Hyunji had never felt smaller in her life as she walked across the polished floor toward the speaking platform at the center. The air itself seemed heavy with the weight of civilizations that had existed since before Earth's continents had settled into their current positions. Chairman Veltar of the Ethereal Collective dominated the highest tier of seats. The ancient being appeared as a shifting column of silvery light that occasionally took on almost human features before dissolving back into pure energy. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, resonating through the chamber like distant thunder. "Ambassador Kim of the human species," Veltar intoned, "you stand accused of conducting illegal experiments that threaten the stability of local spacetime. Explain these gravitational anomalies before this council passes judgment on your entire civilization." Hyunji looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien representatives. Some she recognized from diplomatic functions. The crystal-bodied Vorthak, with their musical voices, the hulking Gorvani who communicated through chemical sense, the graceful Zenthari with their 6 arms and gossamer wings. Others were completely unknown to her, being so alien that she couldn't even guess how they perceived the world. All of them were staring at her with expressions she couldn't read, but felt in her bones. Curiosity mixed with condescension. These ancient species saw humanity as children playing with forces beyond their understanding. "Honored Chairman," Hyunji began, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. 3 years ago, human scientists achieved something that your own records claim cannot be done. We have successfully weaponized dark matter itself." The reaction was immediate and explosive. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien communication, clicking, whistling, telepathic static, and sounds that had no equivalent in human language. Several representatives stood up from their seats, their various appendages waving in what she assumed was either excitement or outrage. The hegemony military advisor, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros, slammed one of its forearms against its speaking podium. "Impossible," it roared in heavily accented standard. "Your species has been in space for barely 300 of your years. Dark matter manipulation is theoretical even for civilizations that predate your planet's formation." Chairman Veltar raised what might have been a hand, and silence fell across the chamber like a blanket. "Elaborate, Ambassador. What exactly do you claim to have achieved?" Hyunji took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either save humanity or doom them. Dr. Minseo Choi, working in classified laboratories in our asteroid belt, discovered that dark matter exists in a quantum state that allows for controlled interaction with normal matter. We've built ships that can manipulate this dark matter to become effectively invisible, phase in and out of normal spacetime, and deliver weapons that bypass all known defensive technologies. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the chaos from before. She could feel the weight of hundreds of alien gazes, processing implications that she herself barely understood. A new voice spoke up from the middle tiers, one of the Zenthari. Delegates, its musical tones translated by the chamber's systems. "I speak of controlling the fundamental structure of reality itself. Show us proof of these claims." "The proof," Hyunji said quietly, "is that you detected our test flights. Every gravitational anomaly you've recorded was caused by our ships, learning to exist partially outside normal space. We didn't mean for you to notice, but dark matter manipulation affects space-time in ways we're still discovering. The hegemony advisor's eyes narrowed to hostile slits. Even if this were true, such technology in the hands of a primitive species represents an unacceptable threat to galactic stability. You will surrender this technology immediately for proper oversight. This was the moment Yunji had been dreading and preparing for. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at Chairman Veltar. With respect, we developed this technology because the galaxy has already made it clear that primitive species don't survive without the means to defend themselves. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. She pressed on before anyone could interrupt. 4 years ago, humanity made first contact with 3 different species. All 3 immediately classified us as an inferior race suitable for conquest or elimination. The Hegemony Collective attacked our colonies without warning or provocation. The Vorthak began infiltrating our government to prepare for economic subjugation. Even some council member species made it clear they saw humans as useful only for manual labor and resource extraction. The chamber had gone completely quiet now. Hyunji could hear her own heartbeat echoing off the distant walls. We didn't choose to develop weapons that could reshape reality, she continued. We developed them because the alternative was extinction. Every human colony that was destroyed, every ship that was vaporized, every family that was murdered, all of that happened because we trusted that joining galactic civilization meant joining equals who would respect our right to exist. Chairman Veltar's energy form shifted colors, cycling through what might have been deep thought. You claim necessity drove you to achieve the impossible. Necessity and human stubbornness, Hyunji replied. We have a saying on Earth. Necessity is the mother of invention. When faced with extinction, humans don't lie down and die. We adapt, we innovate, and we survive. Dr. Choi's breakthrough came from desperation, but it worked because humans refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. The Hegemony advisor leaned forward menacingly. Regardless of your motivations, this technology cannot remain in primitive hands. Hyunji smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. That's where you're wrong. It's not in primitive hands anymore. It's in human hands. And we've learned that in this galaxy those might be the same thing, but they're definitely not weak things. The Hegemony military advisor's massive form rose from its seat, all 4 arms gesturing dismissively. Enough of these wild claims, it growled, its voice echoing through the chamber. Your species discovered fire while ours were already traveling between galaxies. You expect us to believe that in 3 centuries you've achieved what we consider impossible after millions of years of advancement. Other military representatives joined in the skepticism. A Vorthak general's crystalline body chimed with what sounded like laughter. Ambassador Kim, your diplomatic efforts are admirable, but these fantasies serve no purpose. Perhaps your scientists achieve some minor gravitational manipulation, but weaponized dark matter? Preposterous. Hyunji had expected this reaction. She touched the small communicator hidden in her sleeve, sending a prearranged signal to Admiral. Taiho. You want proof? She said calmly. Very well, but I should warn you. What you're about to see will change your understanding of what humans are capable of. Chairman Veltar's energy form shifted colors, cycling through what might have been curiosity. We await your demonstration, Ambassador. The chamber's massive viewing screen suddenly activated, showing the space around the council station. Stars stretched out in all directions, with the various alien fleets positioned at respectful distances from the neutral territory. Everything looked perfectly normal. Then reality began to bend. At first it was just a shimmer in space, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The alien delegates leaned forward in their seats, enhanced sensors scanning for any sign of approaching vessels. Their instruments detected nothing. No heat signatures, no electromagnetic emissions, no gravitational disturbances. But the shimmer grew stronger. 8 shapes began to materialize out of what had appeared to be empty space. They flickered in and out of visibility like mirages, sometimes solid and metallic, sometimes translucent as ghosts. The human warships were unlike anything in the galactic databases, sleek, predatory forms that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The alien military experts were on their feet now, frantically checking their displays. "Impossible," whispered the Vorthak general. "Our sensors show nothing, but we can see them with our own eyes." Admiral Tejo's voice crackled through the chamber's communication system. "Council representatives, I am Admiral Tejo Park of the Human Defense Fleet. You requested a demonstration of our capabilities. Observe." The lead ship, the Phantom of Terror, began to change. Its hull seemed to ripple like water, shifting between solid matter and something else entirely. The vessel appeared to stretch and compress, existing in multiple positions simultaneously, before snapping back into focus. "What we're witnessing violates the fundamental laws of physics," breathed a Zenthari scientist, its 6 arms dancing across holographic controls. "Matter cannot exist in multiple states simultaneously. It cannot phase in and out of normal space-time." But the human ships were doing exactly that. The demonstration continued as the fleet began to move. The vessels accelerated without any visible propulsion, no engine flares or gravitational distortions that should accompany such maneuvers. They simply began moving faster, defying Newton's laws as casually as a fish swimming through water. Then, Admiral Tejo showed them something that made the entire chamber fall silent. "Targeting asteroid designation Council 7 Alpha," his voice announced. A small chunk of rock about the size of a building floated peacefully near the station, one of dozens of such debris that had been cleared from shipping lanes. The Phantom of Terror's weapons array glowed with an eerie purple light that seemed to bend space around it, a pulse of energy that looked more like liquid shadow than any conventional beam weapon shot out toward the asteroid. The rock didn't explode. It didn't vaporize or break apart. It simply ceased to exist. For 10 full seconds, the asteroid was completely gone from normal space. Sensors couldn't detect it. Visual confirmation showed empty space, and even gravitational measurements indicated nothing was there. Then, as smoothly as it had vanished, the asteroid reappeared exactly where it had been, completely unharmed. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the ambient hum of life support systems seemed muted in the face of what they had just witnessed. "We temporarily phased the asteroid out of normal space-time," Admiral Tejo explained, his voice matter of fact. "It existed in a dark matter state for those 10 seconds, invisible and intangible to everything in our reality. We can do this to asteroids, ships, entire planets if necessary. Imagine weapons that your shields cannot stop because they exist in a different dimension until the moment of impact." The hegemony advisor's voice was barely a whisper. "How is this possible?" Hyunji smiled grimly. "Dr. Minseo Choi discovered that dark matter isn't just invisible, it's selectively interactive. We've learned to control that interaction, to shift matter between states at will. Your ancient civilizations assumed dark matter was beyond manipulation, because you've been approaching it with conventional thinking. Humans don't think conventionally." The alien fleets around the station were beginning to retreat, their commanders, clearly unwilling to remain close to vessels that could apparently ignore the laws of reality. Warning alarms echoed through the chamber as proximity sensors detected the human ship's impossible movements. "This is beyond technology," stammered Herr Gorvani, researcher, its chemical communication creating sharp, acrid sense. "This is manipulation of the fundamental forces that hold the universe together." "Yes," Hyunji agreed, "and we've only been working on it for 3 years. Imagine what we'll achieve in 30. Chairman Veltar's energy form had gone completely still, no longer shifting through its usual spectrum of colors. When it finally spoke, its voice carried a weight that made the chamber's walls seem to vibrate. "Ambassador Kim, your species has achieved something that challenges our understanding of what is possible in this universe. This council must now consider the implications of dark matter weaponization in the hands of any civilization, regardless of their age or origins." Admiral Tejo's ships began to fade from view again, phasing back into whatever dimension they used for concealment. "We'll be nearby, Ambassador," his voice said quietly, "just in case this demonstration wasn't convincing enough." As the last traces of the human fleet disappeared from both visual and sensor detection, Hyunji looked around the chamber at the stunned faces of representatives from civilizations millions of years old. "Now," she said calmly, "shall we discuss humanity's place in galactic civilization as equals rather than subjects?" The chamber remained eerily quiet after the human fleet's disappearance, alien representatives still processing what they had witnessed. Hyunji could see the fear in their various forms of expression. The Vorthak's crystalline bodies had dimmed to worried hues, the Zenthari's gossamer wings trembled slightly, and even the massive hegemony advisor seemed to have shrunk into its seat. Chairman Veltar's energy form finally began shifting colors again, cycling through what appeared to be deep contemplation. "Ambassador Kim, such technology represents a fundamental shift in galactic power. We must understand how your species achieved this breakthrough. The implications are staggering." Hyunji nodded slowly. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the council needed to understand the full truth. "What I'm about to show you isn't easy to watch. It's classified footage from 4 years ago when humanity learned that the universe isn't the peaceful place we hoped it would be." She activated her personal data pad, connecting it to the chamber's massive display systems. The screens flickered to life, showing a beautiful blue-green world orbiting a distant star. Neat agricultural settlements dotted the continents, with gleaming cities connected by transport tubes that sparkled in the sunlight. "This was New Geneva," Hyunji said quietly, "our 4th successful colony world, home to 2 million humans who had spent their entire lives building something beautiful and peaceful. They had farms, schools, research centers, children who had never seen Earth but called this place home." The peaceful scene suddenly shattered. Massive ships appeared in the planet's orbit, vessels that dwarfed anything in humanity's fleet at the time. The Hegemony Collective's distinctive angular designs were unmistakable, their hulls bristling with weapons that humanity had never seen before. "No warning," Hyunji continued, her voice steady, but her hands clenched into fists. "No demands for surrender, no negotiation attempts, no declaration of war. They simply arrived and began firing. What happened next made several alien representatives look away from the screens. Beams of sickly yellow energy lanced down from the hegemony ships, striking the human settlements. But these weren't conventional weapons that simply destroyed buildings or vaporized matter. The quantum disruptor beams tore apart molecular bonds themselves. Buildings didn't explode, they simply fell apart at the atomic level, crumbling into dust that was carried away by the wind. People caught in the beams didn't die quickly. They dissolved slowly, their bodies breaking down cell by cell as the quantum field disrupted the fundamental forces holding their atoms together. 2 million people, Hyunji said, her voice now barely above a whisper. Gone in 6 hours. The hegemony didn't even bother to land troops or claim the planet. They just wanted to make a statement about what happened to species that didn't know their place. The footage shifted to another world. New Kyoto, humanity's agricultural center. The same angular ships, the same yellow beams, the same horrific dissolution of everything humans had built. Then New Brisbane, New Lagos, New Stockholm. One by one, humanity's proudest achievements were reduced to atomic dust, while their people died in agony. A Zenthari diplomat's musical voice rose above the horrified silence. "We had no knowledge of these attacks. The hegemony reported these worlds had suffered natural disasters, solar flares, asteroid impacts." "They lied," Hyunji said simply. And the rest of the galaxy believed them because it was easier than admitting that the Hegemony Collective was conducting genocide against a species barely 3 centuries into space travel. The footage changed again, this time showing Earth itself. Emergency meetings in government buildings, desperate scientists working around the clock, families saying goodbye as evacuation ships prepared to flee to the outer system. The blue planet, that had seemed so safe, was now under direct threat. "This is when Dr. Min Seo Choi made her proposal," Hyunji continued. "She was a theoretical physicist working on exotic matter research. Everyone thought her ideas about dark matter manipulation were interesting but impractical. When faced with extinction, impractical ideas suddenly became humanity's only hope. New footage showed hidden shipyards on the far side of Luna, massive construction facilities that had been built in absolute secrecy. Thousands of humans worked, day and night, following blueprints for technology that shouldn't have been possible. The first prototype vessel looked crude compared to the sleek ships they had seen earlier. A boxy, utilitarian design covered in experimental equipment. "The Shadow's Dawn," Hyunji said. "Our first dark matter manipulation vessel. Dr. Choi's team had discovered that dark matter existed in a quantum state that made it immune to conventional weapons while allowing controlled interaction with normal matter. If we could build ships using this principle, they would be effectively untouchable." The prototype's first test flight was shown in painful detail. The vessel flickered in and out of existence, sometimes appearing in multiple locations simultaneously, as the crew struggled to control systems that behaved unlike anything in human experience. 3 crew members were lost during early tests, their bodies phased permanently out of normal space-time. "We lost good people learning to use this technology," Hyunji admitted. "But we didn't have the luxury of centuries to perfect it. The hegemony was already moving toward Earth." The final piece of footage showed the Shadow's Dawn's first combat mission, a single human vessel against an entire hegemony battle group. Approaching the outer planets, the aliens fired their quantum disruptors with complete confidence, expecting to dissolve another human ship into component atoms. The beams passed harmlessly through the Shadow's Dawn as if it wasn't there. Then the human ship returned fire. Dark matter weapons didn't destroy the hegemony vessels, they simply reached through their shields as if they didn't exist and tore the ships apart from the inside. The quantum fields that had been so devastating against human settlements were useless against weapons that existed partially outside normal space-time. "The entire battle group was destroyed in 12 minutes, Hyunji said. Word spread quickly through hegemony space that humanity had developed something impossible. They tried to claim it was some kind of trick, but when our second and third dark matter ships began hunting their fleets, they finally agreed to a ceasefire." She turned off the display and looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. "You asked how we achieved this breakthrough. The answer is simple. You taught us that in this galaxy, species without the means to defend themselves don't survive. We learned that lesson in the blood of 8 million colonists who died because they trusted that galactic civilization would protect them." The hegemony military advisor finally found its voice. "Those were military actions against illegal settlements in disputed space." Hyunji's eyes blazed with cold fury. "New Geneva had been officially recognized by this very council. Your own records show the settlement permits were properly filed and approved. Those weren't military targets, they were genocide victims. And now you're sitting here demanding that we give up the only thing that prevented humanity from joining them." Chairman Veltar's energy form had taken on deep, somber colors. "The implications of what you've shown us require careful consideration. This council was not aware of the hegemony's aggressive expansion methods." "Now you are," Hyunji replied. "The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to demand that the victims surrender their only means of defense? Or are you going to acknowledge that humanity earned the right to exist through blood, sacrifice, and the kind of desperate innovation that only comes from facing extinction?" The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of 8 million ghosts and the knowledge that the galaxy's newest species had learned its harshest lessons in the cruelest possible way. The chamber buzzed with urgent conversations in dozens of alien languages as representatives tried to process what they had witnessed. Chairman Veltar's energy form cycled through rapid color changes, indicating intense deliberation among the ethereal collective's consciousness network. The weight of 8 million human deaths hung heavy in the recycled air. The hegemony military advisor was the first to break the tense silence, rising to its full imposing height. "Regardless of past conflicts, this council cannot allow such dangerous technology to remain in untested hands," it declared, its forearms gesturing dramatically. "We demand immediate condemnation of humanity's illegal weapons development and the surrender of all dark matter manipulation technology for proper oversight by established galactic authorities." Several other representatives nodded in apparent agreement. The Govani delegate released chemical signals that translated as strong support for the hegemony position, while a cluster of smaller species that clearly feared human retaliation seemed ready to vote for whatever kept them safe. Hyunji had expected this moment. She smiled calmly and activated her datapad once more. I'm afraid that's no longer possible, even if we wanted to comply. New information appeared on the chamber's screens, shipping manifests, transport records, and diplomatic agreements that made several alien representatives lean forward in their seats. 3 months ago, 19 different species approached. Humanity through back-channel communications, Hyunji announced. They had all experienced what they called aggressive negotiations with the Hegemony Collective, mining rights seized through economic manipulation, trade routes monopolized through questionable legal tactics, colonies abandoned after mysterious equipment failures that somehow only affected non-hegemony settlements. The Zenthari delegates' wings fluttered with what appeared to be recognition. "The Kenthari system incidents," it whispered. "Our agricultural worlds lost their orbital platforms to simultaneous system failures. The hegemony offered to rebuild them in exchange for exclusive harvesting rights." "Exactly," Hyunji confirmed. 19 species, all facing similar pressure. They asked humanity for help, specifically requesting defensive applications of our dark matter technology. "We've already provided dark matter shielding generators to protect their most vulnerable settlements." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The hegemony advisor's massive form trembled with rage. "Impossible! Such technology transfer requires council approval and decades of safety testing." "Under the old paradigm, yes," Hyunji agreed, "but humanity never agreed to those restrictions. We're not bound by rules created to maintain the status quo when that status quo includes genocide." As an acceptable diplomatic tool. Chairman Veltar's colors shifted to deep contemplative hues. "You speak of a new paradigm, Ambassador. Elaborate." Before Hyunji could respond, Admiral Taeho's voice crackled through the communication system. "Council representatives, please. Direct your attention to the uninhabited system, designated as Baron 7 in your charts." The display screens shifted to show a dead solar system on the chamber's edge. A few rocky planets orbiting a dying red star. The kind of system that had been written off as worthless by galactic civilization thousands of years ago. What happened next defied every understanding of planetary science the assembled delegates possessed. A single human vessel appeared in the system, its dark matter hull shimmering with energy patterns that made space itself bend around it. Engineer Ji Wuxin's voice joined the communication channel, her tone professional but excited. "Beginning accelerated terraforming sequence on planet Baron 7 Charlie," she announced. "Dark matter terraforming beams allow us to manipulate the fundamental forces that govern planetary development. What you're about to see typically takes millions of years." Purple energy beams, similar to the weapons they had seen earlier but tuned to different frequencies, lanced out from the human ship toward the barren world. But instead of destruction, they brought transformation. The planet's surface began to change in real time. Tectonic activity accelerated, creating mountain ranges and ocean basins in minutes instead of millennia. The atmosphere thickened as dormant. Gases were released from the planet's core. Water vapor condensed into clouds, then rain, then vast oceans that filled the newly formed basins. "Impossible," breathed a Vorthak scientist. "Planetary formation is a process that requires geological timescales. You cannot simply accelerate evolution by millions of years." But the human ship was doing exactly that. Within an hour, Baron 7 Charlie had transformed from a dead rock into a blue-green world with continents, oceans, and a breathable atmosphere. Primitive plant life began appearing on the land masses, seeded by the dark matter beams and evolving at impossible speeds. Dark matter manipulation allows us to interact with the fundamental forces of creation itself, Engineer Jiwoo explained. "We can terraform dead worlds, restore damaged ecosystems, even accelerate the evolution of beneficial species. The same technology that makes our weapons so effective also gives us the power to create life instead of destroying it." The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Species that had been struggling with dying homeworlds or overcrowded systems suddenly saw possibilities that hadn't existed an hour earlier. The economic and political ramifications were staggering. Hyunji seized the moment. This is what humanity offers the galaxy, not domination through superior firepower, but transformation through cooperative innovation. We propose a new galactic charter based on mutual protection and shared prosperity, rather than dominance by whoever has the biggest fleet. She gestured to the terraformed world still visible on the screens. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Dead systems brought back to life, damaged worlds restored to their former glory, species given new homes instead of being forced to fight over scraps of habitable space. The hegemony advisor was frantically working its communication devices, clearly trying to coordinate a response with its home government. This council cannot simply abandon millennia of established order based on one species' technological breakthrough. Why not? Asked a small delegate from the Kirathi Confederation, a species that had been reduced to 3 marginally habitable worlds after their star began dying. Our people have been facing extinction for centuries. If the humans can give us new worlds to live on, why should we preserve a system that was slowly killing us? Other voices joined in. The Zenthari delegate spoke of agricultural worlds that could be restored. The Vorthak mentioned mining systems that could be revitalized. Even some species that had initially supported the hegemony position began questioning whether the old ways were truly worth preserving. Chairman Veltar raised what might have been a hand, and the chamber fell silent. The vote before this council is clear, it announced. Do we maintain the existing galactic order with all its flaws, or do we embrace a new paradigm offered by humanity's unique capabilities? The humans offer partnership instead of subjugation, added the Zenthari delegate. They share their technology instead of hoarding it. They create new worlds instead of fighting over existing ones. They also possess weapons that could destroy us all, countered the hegemony advisor. So did the hegemony, replied the Kirathi representative quietly. The difference is that humans use their power to defend the weak instead of exploiting them. As the formal voting process began, Hyun-ji watched representatives from across the galaxy make their choices. Species that had lived in fear for millennia were choosing hope. Civilizations that had accepted stagnation were choosing growth. The final tally was overwhelming. The new galactic charter passed by a margin that surprised even Hyun-ji. Humanity's proposal for mutual protection and cooperative development had won not through conquest or intimidation, but by offering something the galaxy desperately needed: a better way forward. Chairman Veltar's energy form shifted to brilliant gold, indicating formal acceptance. Ambassador Kim, your species has taught this galaxy something we had forgotten in our ancient wisdom. True strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to create. As celebration erupted across the chamber, Hyun-ji smiled and looked out at the stars visible through the station's great windows. Somewhere out there, 19 species were sleeping more safely because of human protection. A dead world had been brought back to life in a single afternoon, and the universe's youngest sapient species had just become its most influential, not by conquering space, but by mastering it.